Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new here. Today we are doing another step-by-step painting tutorial of this nice landscape scene that you can see here in front of me. I'm going to take you through it step by step, talk about some basics, talk about some tips, and just go through this full painting. If you want a list of materials or a list of paints that I've used, check out the description. I've got that full list there for you. Let's jump right into this one. Alright, so we got our blank canvas here. I've already drawn out just a few guiding lines. I will just briefly go through what I've done. So with a lot of landscape paintings, and just paintings in general, you'll hear a lot about the rule of thirds, right? You want to measure a third of the way down, a third of the way up, a third of the way in. So I've done that a little bit here. Like our back trees, they're starting roughly a third of the way down. Our stream here is starting roughly a third of the way in. This part over here where we're going to have some major flowers is a little bit more than a third of the way up, but we're just working a little bit with that rule of thirds. So tree is going to be about a third of the way in here and over here as well. Just working in with that. So I've just done a little sketch with pencil just to get ourselves lined up. Now we're going to jump right into our sky. Now when you're doing landscape paintings, you usually want to start with the background and work your way to the foreground. It just works easier for layering. And then you're not worrying about painting around things as much. You can just paint past your line and then go back over top of that slightly once you're doing the next layer over top. Now for this one, we're going to have a pretty easy sky. It's going to be quite muted, so we're going to use a lot of white. We're going to use a little bit of gray in there as well, just to kind of tone things down. But the main blues that we're going to use for this is just some Cerulean Blue Hue and some light blue permanent. Just a little bit of these is really going to take us a long way. So I'm going to put some of this stuff down here, just onto the palette. A little bit of each of these. And if I didn't mention, actually I know I didn't mention it before, we are using all Liquitex Basics acrylic paint. I find them to be a good quality student grade paint. Their colors are very vibrant, but the results that you get are still quite nice. So I'm going to put a little bit of all these down here. Probably the most white, because that's what we're going to use the most. And I'm just going to take this larger brush, and I'm using a larger brush because you want to cover the surface more quickly. If you're using a smaller brush, it's going to take you a heck of a lot of time to do what we're going to do in just about a minute or so here. Probably a little bit more than that once we go through. But I'm going to take some of this cerulean blue, just spread a little bit of that out. And now right away, I'm going to take some of this gray and just mix that in there. Get a little bit of white. Take some of this light blue. And you'll notice that I'm doing some pretty wide horizontal brush strokes. If you want to mix it in, you can do some diagonal ones. If you want some real blending to happen, I'm going to get a bit more white out in here. The more brush strokes you do, the more it's going to blend in. If you want less blending, just do less brush strokes. Want some more gray and this light blue here, and some white. And as you get closer to the horizon line, you are going to want that to get a bit lighter. So I'm getting a bit more white onto the paintbrush there, and using more white towards the bottom here. Alright, just make sure that you've gone past where your trees are going to be, because you don't want any white spaces left there. Maybe I want it a little bit whiter in there. If you want to just make a few extra little clouds, just take a little bit of white on the end of your brush and just brush it into a few spots, and that'll create more of that cloud effect throughout. All right, that's all we're going to do for the sky. That's it. Now, if you're wondering what I use for a water cup, water jar, I use a mason jar. I like using mason jars because they have lids. I've got kids around, and so it's nice to have something that has a lid on it just in case. I try to keep things out of reach, but you never know. And then for rags, I just use old clothes that I've cut up instead of using a whole bunch of paper towel. I use paper towel every once in a while, but I try to just use old clothes as much as I can. I find that to be a good way to be a little bit more environmentally friendly. All right, so we've done the sky. That's all we're doing there. Now we're going to move on to our background of trees. Now for the background of trees, the further away a green color is, the more blue it's going to look. So we're going to use a cooler green here to start. We're going to use this Green Deep Permanent for these back trees. So I am going to put a little bit of this down right here. And I'm going to make 3 little spots there. The reason being, I'm going to put black beside one of them. Just a little bit of black. I've got some white there already that we are going to use, and I'm going to put just a little bit of this Naples Yellow Hue, just like a tan color, and I'm going to mix that in a little bit as well. For mixing, I like to use palette knives. This seems to be a classic shape, and I do like this shape for mixing. So I'm going to take some of this black, not all of it, mix that in there. I might just add a little bit of this gray just to lighten that up just a little bit. Okay, now I'm afraid that black will taint other stuff, so I'm just going to wipe this off. I'm going to take some of this Naples Yellow Hue, mix that in there with that. It's warmed it up slightly, but it's still cooler. I just wanted it a little bit lighter. And I'm going to take some white with this one, and a little bit of that Naples Yellow as well. Let's see here. I feel like, oh no, I don't want that. I feel like I need just a little bit more out there, and just more of a medium toned. Okay, there we go. All right, so for these background trees, there's a few different brushes you can use to do these. I often like using fan brushes for pine trees, and the reason being is you can create nice vertical spots. So I'm going to take this, I'm just taking the dark for now, and so with this dark we're actually going to cover up most of what this canvas is showing us here. You're going to want some tall ones, some shorter ones, maybe taller on the edge right there. And this is just creating that nice uneven pine tree texture that you might have in the background. Really the most important thing that you do here is that you go past where the sky has come down. A lot of this stuff right in the middle here is going to be covered up anyway, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time here. I'm just laying down a bit of a foundation of a background that will then be kind of played around with later. Just making sure there's a nice bottom ground in there. Now to create more of that kind of maybe more of a misty feel to it. I'm just going to take a little bit of all this with a bit of white. It's making a bit of more of a gray to it. And just going in around and behind these taller trees. That's kind of showing more behind what's going on here. Almost like there's some trees that are really far behind that are poking up behind these ones in the front that are more closer to us and darker, if that makes sense. Okay, once you got that done, now I'm going to take this more medium and add a few more defined trees in the front here. Now notice that I'm not filling in the whole space. I'm more so just adding in some highlights, and again adding in some more defined trees into the back here. Okay, now with that again, I'm going to take this even lighter green. Doing that same idea. And this lightest green we'll add in here in a few spots as well. This is more for highlights, this lightest green here. Again, I'm not worrying too much about that spot because we're going to be going through that with stuff over top. Okay, I'm gonna wipe this one off, give it a little rinse. And we'll move closer into our foreground here. So for the foreground, I'm gonna do just kind of a basic sketch in with some greens and more of like a blue, similar to what our sky was in there for the stream, and then we'll go back in and we can add some finer details around. So for our greens, this is more of a lighter green. I'm going to use some light green permanent. This is quite saturated, so I'm going to tone this down with some Naples Yellow Hue, maybe even a bit of Cadmium Yellow Deep Hue, we'll see here. And I'm going to use a bit of this brilliant yellow green as well for darker greens. Now that we're closer, I want to use a warmer green, so I'm going to use this Hooker's Green Hue Permanent. If you look at these two and you compare them, you can see that this is a warmer green compared to a cooler green. This is more towards blue, where this is more towards the yellow side of things. Okay, so let's do a little bit of mixing here on the side. I'm going to get a little bit of that out here. Wipe this off. Just going to take some of this, just mix it in with this green, Add a little bit of white to it. Take some of this and mix it in with this light green, brilliant yellow green. Get a bit more white down here. Just making some various shades of green that we're going to use for these grassy little hills here. Alright, so again I'm going to get this big brush out so we can cover a lot of space in a little bit of time. And even though we will be adding a few little details to these hills, we can do most of it with this one here. So I'm just going to take some of this green here. Sorry, I have some eraser marks on there. And you'll see, if you've painted with green before, sometimes green can be a little bit transparent, so we're getting a little bit of that here. We might need to do 2 layers right up against those trees there. Just taking a lighter, one of those lighter ones, putting that right up there close. And now some of the greens will actually need to be darker. So I'm going to bring out some of this Hooker's Green Hue Permanent, and to darken that up I want it to stay nice and warm, so I'm going to get out a little bit of raw umber as well. Raw umber is just a dark brown, because we're going to have a tree right in here, and this tree is going to want some darker green right below it. So I'm going to bring in some of this darker green right in here. Really just right in there is all I needed. Okay, I'm going to move over to this other side here. We're going to have another tree over here, so I'm just going to get a little bit of darker green. Moving up this hillside here. Okay. Right up front here, we're going to have a lot of this darker green. It's going to be underneath of the flowers that we put in. Okay, this other side, still just going to work in the same idea. Just by adding little variations in, that's kind of our detail slash texture for these grassy hills here. Alright, I'm just going to take a little bit more of this darker green. Probably need a little bit more than that, actually. Just wiping off that brush a little bit. And I'm just going to add some of this into the shoreline. Right there. down here as well. I'm taking a little bit of this black that I had before, adding that into a few spots. Some of this is going to get painted over anyways. Okay, I'm going to take some of this lighter green, just to touch up a few spots here. All right, there we go. I think that's good for what we need to do at this moment. Okay, so I want to add these trees in before we add any other details. Sorry, I'm just rinsing that one off. We'll come back to the stream. I'm not too worried about that at the moment. So for these trees, we're going to have a couple over here, couple over here, kind of some more towards the background area there as well. So for this, I'm going to grab, let's see what sizes I got here. You could use a round brush, you could use a filbert brush. Both will serve you well. I think I'm going to stick with a round brush for this one. And so our furthest back trees are more yellow, and so I'm going to take some of this Cadmium Yellow Deep here, making a mess of this palette here, but that's okay. Making a couple spots there. And some of this is actually okay to mix in here. Like some of the green that was still on my palette knife. Just toning that down a little bit. I do want some to be nice and saturated like that. I'm also going to take some of this darker green, mix some of that in there. We have some really dark green in here still. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this darker green that we have and just start dabbing it in. And you can bring in some of that old stuff that we were using there as well. And then over top of that, I'm going to take more of this green here. And again, this isn't supposed to be super detailed. So I'm just dabbing some in. Just going to wipe that off a little bit. Take some of this more yellow. Go over quite a bit here of what we've done. Wipe it off one more time. Grab some of this more saturated yellow, just the pure Cadmium Yellow Deep Hue, and add this around a little bit. Just in a few spots here. Okay. Feeling fine about that back tree now. For the trunk, I'm just going to take some of this brown. It's not like we're really going to see much of a trunk in here. Just adding a few spots of brown in there to mimic that there's a lot of tree trunks back there. Okay, we're going to move up to our trees that are along here. Now these are more red. So these trees here, for them, let me find it back here. I'm going to be using some Cadmium Red Deep Hue, some Pyrrole Red. I'll probably end up using a little bit of Cadmium Orange Hue just for the highlights, mixed in with a little bit of this red as well. So for this, I'm going to take some of this red, the deep red, and I'm going to wipe this off. And I'm going to mix it in with, some of it I'll mix in with raw umber, so I'm going to get a bit more of raw umber out here. But I am going to just mix in some with some black. Basically use some black here. So we got some real dark stuff. If you are using black, I will warn you that black is very powerful, so just be careful with it. Mix a little bit at a time. You don't want to mix a lot. There we go. That's nice. A nice deep red. Okay, so I'm going to take this. Now these trees are really, they're starting right in here, so I'm just going to start putting in some of this black and red, and they are going to overlap with this other tree, which is what we want to happen, so if that's okay once you go over those a little bit. But they're going to stretch pretty much to the top of our canvas up here. Now we want, well, you can decide how you want to do your trees. I can't force you to do anything, but I'm going to have this tree kind of have a little spot over here. It's going to come up in the middle over here to a bigger branch up there, and then it'll come down this side nicely here and come back over. I'm going to have a few standout spots. And we're going to extend past this as well. This is just our basic outline, but the lighter highlights are going to go outside of this as well. So I'm just going to scribble this in here. It's going to come out a little bit here as well. Come out over here as well into this tree. Again, we're going to expand past this. This is just a bit of our plan. Same with on this side. Our tree is going to go in right about over here. Stretch over to the side. Stretch right over here. And I'm just going to block this in a bit. It's going to come right up. Come over. And like the other one, it's going to go right up close to the top. This one will probably actually even touch the top. Come up here a little bit. Okay. So you can let this dry if you'd like to. I just kind of like to get at it and just do some wet on wet paint. It's it can get a little bit messy and you gotta wipe your brush off a lot at times, but we can make it work. So I'm just gonna take some of that pure Cadmium Red Deep Hue because this is gonna mix in with what we have underneath. And I'm gonna just kind of shape in some of the, oh, that's the lighter stuff. Some of these lighter spots on this tree. So then we got a lighter spot coming in up here. Near the top we have some lighter spots. I'm going to use the other one for the main highlights though. Same with this tree over here. Just a little bit more of this out. Okay, I'm going to take some of this lighter red now and do kind of that same idea, but a bit more sparsely. But then this will be the one that extends more past what I've already done. So you got to wipe it off at times, otherwise the dark will get into it too much. Maybe a few spots right in here as well, right in the middle. Okay, now I want to take a bit of this cadmium orange here, and I want a little bit of white just to test something out. So I'm going to take this orange and mix it in here with this. It's going to take a little bit of white with it as well. Yeah, it's a nice color in there. Okay. We will be using this again, but not right away. I'm just going to rinse it just in case. What we want to do now is add in our tree trunks. So I'm just going to use, if I can find it here. Oh, I thought I had it there, but I guess I didn't. Just use this, just an angular brush. I was going to use just a flat brush, but just something that's nice and skinny for us. And I'm just going to take some of this raw umber first. If you mix in a little bit of this dark stuff with it, that's okay if it gets a little bit darker. And I want some trees coming in from the back here. And then our big trunk is going to come in right here. Now, I guess we'll do this other side here first as well. Take a little bit more black here. Bit of a lighter color, just to highlight it a bit. Could use white for that. I decided to use a bit of that yellow. And I'm going to take this as well up in here and add just a few signs of branches throughout. Okay. Now, while I have this small brush out, I may as well continue to use it for a moment here. I'm going to bring out a little bit more of this dark, warmer green, the Hooker's Green Hue Permanent. Mix in a bit of that with our other greens and the raw umber just to tone it down a little bit as well. And I just want to make sure that there's a nice shadow underneath these trees here. Okay, now I'm going to move into this part of the foreground. We're going to save the stream for last. It's not too big of a deal there. And for this, I am going to bring out a bit more black here. And our trusty round brush that we were using. Now I'm going to just prep a little bit here. I still have some nice dark red that I'm going to use, but I do want a little bit of just that red pure and a bit of this red mixed in with orange. So I'm going to remix some of that in here as well. Just nice and light. Could even do a bit of yellow in there. Just trying to lighten it up. Could add a little bit of white to that as well. Beautiful. Just going to put a little bit of white here, just if I want to use it here in a moment. So I'm going to take my round brush and basically black to start, and I just want to block in a little bit right there. Now I'm going to take this dark green and add in this dark green right below it. Could add in just a little bit. I'm just going to do little vertical strokes like this, and this is just planning to mimic kind of like grass that's just underneath. Just darker grass. You can change directions a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to get this darker red. And just paint in what would be just petals of flowers underneath. So on this bottom part here, we're going to have some darker spots. Again, most of this is going to get covered. We're going to extend this up all the way over to here. We'll use a few darker spots later on as well. Now I can just take some of the cadmium dark pure, and again, we're not covering the full thing, we're just adding some in as we go. Need a little bit more, just the pure out here. Don't mind my air conditioner, that just turned on. It's been over 30 degrees this whole week. I'm surprised it didn't turn on earlier, to be honest. Make sure I'm adding some a little bit higher as well. This will be the darker layer that gets covered up by lighter ones as we're moving our way up here. Okay, I'm going to take some of this pure Pyrrole Red, start to do the same thing, but just start with it just a little bit higher to hopefully give the illusion of some depth change. I love nice big broad strokes with thick paint on there. I know some people water down their paint or things like that. I just like using the paint as it is. Okay, then I'll take this even lighter now. And go in and do that exact same thing one more time. And take a little bit of white, just in a few spots here. And we're going to use these reds now that I have them back out. And I'm going to add in just some fallen leaves underneath of these trees here. So you don't have to cover up the whole area, but we just want to add the effect of some fallen leaves off of these trees. And we're mainly going to stick with the darker reds here because they're underneath the trees, and so they're in the shade, they're in the shadows. Okay, I'm liking that. Might just add a little bit more of this darker stuff right here. Just underneath a little bit more. Nice. That's good. Alright, now we'll move on to our stream and add in some details with that as we go. So for our stream, we are going to use a little bit of that cerulean blue that we used in the sky, because it's going to be a bit of a reflection of that sky, a little bit of that light blue permanent that we have there, and then white, black. You could use a Payne's gray if you'd like. Payne's gray is a nice color, but I'm not going to use that one here. So I want to take a little bit of this black, take some of this cerulean hue, just darken that up a little bit, and I'm just going to block this in. I'm definitely going to need more. I just wanted to kind of test a little bit of this color, but that is a nice color that we're getting there. So I'm going to get a bit more of this cerulean blue. Wipe this off here. Get a little bit more black to it. A little bit of white to it. There we go, it's looking nice. This is just going to be our background blue. We're going to add different things over top of this. So I'm just going to fill this in here. The only real edge that you need to be a bit cautious with is this one on the left bank, because we're not going to be touching this side really anymore. We're going to adjust the shoreline on the one that we can actually see, but the one over here is as if it's over the little ridge, right? And so we want more of just a smooth transition there. And it's coming up all the way to here. You want to be a little careful, I guess, with this other bank here, but it's not a big deal if you go into the grass a bit, because we are going to add some grass back into it, add a few rocks as well. Now initially I did imagine kind of like a separate little branch coming off here, but I think I'm gonna just cancel that idea, and we're gonna go with just our main streamline here. Okay, now I'm gonna grab some white, mix it in with this blue that we were doing here. I've got a whole bunch of it now on my brush, and I'm going to do just some broad brush strokes, horizontal brush strokes I meant to say as well, just up the stream as we go. They don't have to go all the way across at all the places. They can just, this is just to add some texture to it. It can go all the way across if you'd like it to. I'm going to add grass into there, don't worry. Take some more white. Again, the more you brush it in, obviously the more it's going to blend. So if you want a nice white streak, just do 1 or 2 brush strokes. That's all you need to do. Don't want red on there. Need a little bit more white. Just gonna smoothen out a few spots. Okay, I like that where that's at. I'm gonna grab some of this black here. This black is going to touch up much of these shorelines as they move along the stream bed. And then I'm going to take some of this darker green and add in kind of like grass coming out of there. Could use some of this lighter green here as well, actually. I was just blending those out a little bit there as I went, and I feel like we're good. That's all you need to do. If you want to go back and adjust any spots, definitely feel free to do that. Maybe I want to adjust that little spot where I had some red get down on the canvas there. Just cover that up a little bit. It's still not perfect, but this is just for fun and for practice anyways. All right, now you can go ahead and sign your painting. If you want to sign it, you don't have to, but you can. I'll give you some ideas. A lot of people will sign it with their full name, just their last name, just their initials. Some will put the year. Some will put, for example, like apostrophe 24. That's what I often do. For my larger professional paintings, I will sign my full name. For ones like this, I will just go ahead and sign just my last name, usually is what I would do. And I often just use a color that I've been using in the painting And so I'm going to sign it down in this corner because I don't really want to sign on the water there. So I'm going to sign over here, and I'm just going to use some of this red that I was using earlier. That is definitely too dark. Let's use some of this lighter stuff. I like to kind of hide my signatures a little bit. No, not necessarily hide them, but I don't like them to stand out. And I'm just going to do Sloan, and I'll do an apostrophe 24. If you're following this a bit down the road, let me know when you did it. There we go. Sloan 24. Rinse that off. We are good to go. If you followed along with me right to the end, I'd love to see your finished painting. If you followed me partway through, then you wouldn't be here listening anyways. If you haven't checked out my other step-by-step acrylic painting tutorials, I really encourage you to do so. I'll link that playlist below for you to check out. If you have any suggestions of future tutorials that you would like to see, don't hesitate to leave those in the comments or send me a message as well. Thank you for following along with this one. We'll see you next time here on Brian Sloan Artist.